Welcome to Talking Business and Life with Claudio Reilsono and Steve Mancini. Claudio and Steve will share their business and life experience to help you grow your business and improve your life. Here's Claudio and Steve.
Good evening and welcome to Talking Business and Life. I am your co-host, Steve Mancini, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Claudio Reilsono. Claudio, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you? I just got done with my accountant, so I'm not in the best of moods, but I'm good enough. I'm good.
It is tax season.
I know.
By the way, I feel like I am, I don't want to say driving a spaceship, but I have like two hands. This one is in the wrong position. This one here is in the wrong position to do anything.
I'm trying to teach you how to do
and
this.
This one is like
you're
three
not
different
listening
things.
to me.
I know. All right, Claudio, we have a wonderful guest.
We do.
Let's talk about that because we're excited to jump in with our guest because we think this one's going to be the whole point. The whole point of the show is to be informative but entertaining. We think we got a good guest this week. We better, or else you're out.
I'm out. Well, a guest in a few weeks, Stratton Nash from Swickley, told me about our guest today. And he said he's a great guy, played European basketball, was a star in high school and college. I said, we got to have him on. So Tim Appleton, again, he played basketball in Europe for quite a few years. He was a stockbroker. Now he's a tutor / mentor. And, you know, we had a 15, 20-minute conversation on the phone before we met today. And what a great guy. Stratton was right on the button. He's a great guy. And I really enjoyed talking to him, and I know he's going to be a great guest. And Tim, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, without question.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's start off. You're from this area. You played basketball at Swickley Academy.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about, which I live about 3 blocks from there. Tell us about your career at Swickley Academy.
Well, let me start, if you don't mind. I grew up in Avalon.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
I grew up in, is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
I grew up in Avalon, and by the age of about 10 or 11, for whatever reason, it was a very good sports town, without question, the North Hills, and there was a really good level of street basketball. And by about 10 or 11, I had decided that was the route I was going to go, and pretty much from that time on, I was hooked on basketball. And then I'd go down early in the mornings and shoot baskets, and there was real good pickup games that by the time I was 12 or so, or 13, I was getting to be able to break into. And, and that's kind of where it evolved until I got to 9th grade. And at that point, for whatever, I was very fortunate. I was a newspaper boy and got an old newsboy scholarship to Swickley Academy.
Oh, wow.
And
I know they had something like that. Yeah.
I was a paper boy for a lot of years. And it was really a life-altering event for quite a lot of reasons. Now, my career at Swickley Academy, okay? It's not like I went down to Swickley Academy as a star or anything like that. I was all of 5'4" and weighed about 105 pounds as going into my 10th grade year in high school. But I was going to be a basketball player.
You got a dream. You got to start somewhere.
So I go into the coach, and he's looking down from his desk, and I said, I'm going to be an NBA basketball player. And he's chuckling quite a bit, but I grew. And by my senior year in high school at the academy, I was 6'3", maybe give or take a little bit, but about 145 pounds. And my senior year, through a odd group of circumstances, our team wasn't real strong, but I knew I was going to have to perform at a high level. We had an incredibly difficult schedule. Mm-hmm. And after about the first 5 games, I was averaging close to 50 points a game.
Wow.
And my life at that point changed. From that point on, I was double, triple teamed and kind of had a different mentality. I became confident in my ability to shoot a basketball and score on a basketball court. And ended up my senior year averaging 43.6 and leading the nation in scoring.
Without a 3-point shot.
Or a timeline.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Or a
that's
timeline.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty good numbers, Steve.
Okay. No, I'm kidding. I do want to ask, I want to go back in time, though, because you said there was an age where you said, I decide this is what I want to do. There were a lot of kids around you that probably had their dreams, but was there a point where you realized, and it kind of sounds like after your senior year realizing, like, hey, I'm not just some kid that wants to play basketball. I'm actually pretty good at it. What was the point in your life, though, like obviously early on, where you realized, where it clicked and went, not only do I want to do this, I can do this?
Well, what I would say is that I was one of those odd characters that wasn't smart enough to ever think I couldn't. Okay, I was going to be a basketball player. And it was, I was going to grow. My dad was fairly tall, so I had to have a lot of belief. But obviously, my life would have been different had I only grown to be 5'9" or 5'10". As I said, I grew through college. I was 6'3" when I graduated high school, 6'7". I'd have played in the NBA at 6'7", 235. And so, and again, what I learned along the way, and again, because I was small, I learned to handle the ball. And I also had to shoot from long distances. And it's a lot easier to go from the outside to the inside than the inside to the outside.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of advantages that were kind of hidden. They weren't great advantages when I was living through them, but they were great advantages as my career went on. So again, my answer to you is I had a strange belief, and I just almost afraid of failure, to be quite honest.
I want to chime in because, Claudio, you and I have interviewed some other guests, and the one thing that I've noticed that a lot of people that would, I'll say, make it, they never had a plan B. We talked to a few guests like that. They never had a plan B, and that's kind of funny because I would almost, if I were coaching a student athlete, I'd be like, well, make sure you get your education and all this stuff. Like, I wouldn't be telling them they're going to make it. It's just funny when you think about people that are just like, well, I never saw my life not making it.
Andretti was one.
Yeah, that's one. That's exactly what came to mind.
Yeah, we had Mancini on. He never had none of them. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that clump like that.
No, but like they were always like, what do you mean I'm not going to make it? And that's what I'm kind of asking you. It's like, you kind of like, you fell into that. I'm curious because I suspect you have to think like that to make it, but that doesn't guarantee that you will make it, if that makes sense.
For me, it was fear, like you said. I mean, I put all my eggs in that. I think Mark Twain said, put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket. So I watched that basket, But were you ever worried? I know I was. I could tell you, I won't say it. There was a story in the summer of '84. I don't know if this is going to work for me. Did you ever have one of those nights, those days?
Well, again, I through odd circumstances, and certainly not through my own doing, and not even through my own choices, it wasn't like I wasn't getting a good education. Mm-hmm. Okay, I had the good fortune to go to Swickley Academy, and to be honest, I learned a love of learning there. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a plan B per se, but it was definitively an interest in learning. Okay, which I give the Academy a world of credit for. So, and then because I was 6'3", 145 pounds, I was recruited by a great number of, Division I, large Division I schools. But they all wanted to redshirt me. Right. My dad was a college professor. My brother went to Kenyon College, which is the baseball coach at Carnegie Mellon. You're probably familiar with Kenyon. Sure, it's a very good academic institution. So Plan B just kind of occurred. I mean, I was never overly concerned that if basketball didn't pan out, they didn't have an education. I did have an education. So, but my heart was in basketball, pure and simple.
What other schools, you said some Division I, what other schools came after you that you were close to signing with?
Okay, I would say the closest by far was Duquesne, locally. Okay, and it was, as a matter of fact, it was the Red Manning era. But he was transitioning out. He had two top assistants, Al Bailey and John Sinicola.
Oh, yeah, John Sinicola, sure.
Right, who became the head coach. Al Bailey recruited me.
Okay.
And he, again, obviously, I was an odd player, scored a lot of points, had a big ego. I was going to be a scorer in college, no matter where I went.
It takes that, though. It takes that attitude.
And so I didn't have a plan on being backup or whatever. Al Bailey believed in me. John Sinicola did not. Did not necessarily see the same things in me that Mr. Bailey did. And had Coach Bailey gotten the job, I feel pretty strongly I would have gone to Duquesne.
Okay.
Now, my best college recruiting story, okay, is after I was recruited by most of the Big Ten schools, but all with the same odd red shirt and whatever, and not with any real guarantee I was going to be even a starter or whatever, because, again, 6'3", 145 pounds. I mean, I knew I was going to be 6'7", and certainly the coaches all didn't.
They didn't know.
They didn't know that. So anyway, I just, my dad, I did not want a red shirt. I wanted to play basketball. Sure. Okay. So one thing led to another, and my older brother was at Kenyon, and the school made a very good, combination offer for my brother and me, and I ended up in Gambira High at Kenyon. Okay, and so my mom was tired of the phone calls and everything else. So we put a hard deadline, and there was going to be no more calls from coaches. Now, I was recruited moderately by Dean Smith at North Carolina. Okay, I had already made up my mind and everything, and hadn't heard from Coach Smith personally. Okay, it was probably 2 or 3 weeks, middle of April, way past recruiting season. And my mom picks up the phone, and I'm walking by, and it's a college coach. And my mom doesn't know college basketball from whatever, and I'm just walking by the phone. It's Coach Smith from North Carolina. And my mom says, "Oh, no, we're not taking any more phone calls, Coach Smith." So, and I'm thinking this must be a joke by one of my friends or something like that. And I'm walking by, and I said, "Mom, who is it?" He's some guy named, he said, he's Dean Smith from North Carolina. And I said, "You're kidding me, Mom. Give me the phone." And it turns out that I was number 2 on their list of big guards.
Wow.
And he made it very clear they don't recruit 2 people for the same position, and that they had all along had their number 1 guy signed.
Who was that guy?
Well,
not Charlie Scott, right?
No, not Charlie Scott, but equally good. He was, and that's what Coach Smith says. I hate to do this, but he called us last night and said he's not coming to North Carolina. So we're going to try to talk him back into it. But if he doesn't come through, would you want to come to North Carolina? It took me about a count of 3. Absolutely, yes. I said, "You want me to jump? You want me to drive down there now?" It was Walter Davis.
Oh, not bad.
Yeah, so I always felt, and that's actually what Coach Smith said to me, is you'll be very proud to know you got beat up by somebody good. And Coach
I don't know about proud.
But Coach Smith, what a fabulous guy. He stayed in touch with me throughout my college career.
Yeah, that's nice. That's good.
Very
to hear.
nice.
That's good to hear.
Let me ask you, when you reflect back on that time, and obviously the person you are now is clearly very different, what was important to you back then that drew you to certain people? I mean, obviously they're records and they're famous and all that, and you're young, and I don't want to call you shallow in that regard, but there probably was a shallowness, like, wow, this is a really famous coach and they're really good, I'm going to go there. What was it that was drawing you to someone or pushed you away from someone?
That's a very good question. Sadly to say, it would have been who fanned my ego maybe the best, unfortunately. I mean, I would have been an easy sell for anybody who said, "Look, we believe in you, and we believe you can be a very good player at our school." Because, again, like I said, it wasn't like I probably wouldn't have been in the top 50 players in Western Pennsylvania going into my senior year. And then all of a sudden, I exploded kind of on the scene. And so there were still a lot of doubters, to put it mildly. Okay, and even a lot of the big schools that recruited me, it was more on a chance type situation. He might turn out to be pretty darn good, not that he will turn out to be pretty darn good. And so, believe me, I had a chip on my shoulder, and I played hard and wanted to prove to everybody I could play the game of basketball.
I apologize. I know Claudio was about to jump in, and I cut him off, but
No.
I want to go in on that because. On one hand, you're just blowing it up in high school, so you're putting up crazy numbers, and you're thinking, "I got this. I'm going to go to coach." But then, the fact that, like I said, I'm not saying just like in an accusatory way, but I'm curious about something personality-wise because were you like still having doubts about yourself that you needed that, or were you just like, "No, I know I'm the best, and if you're not basically being nice, like kicking my ass, moving on."
Well, again, I think there's a balance between the two, to be quite honest. Again, I could not picture myself being a filler player. Okay, so
Well, after your high school, what you're doing in high school, absolutely right.
yes, I mean, so again, when schools recruited me, it was with the idea, from my end at least. I mean, there'd be a lot of people they did recruit for different reasons. You know, to be the fifth man. I was going to have to. I needed to have the ball. Okay, and I don't think I could have readjusted. It never did, to be quite honest. I mean, there wasn't a level that I played at again ever that I wasn't scoring a lot of points and taking a lot of shots and whatever, and was always I don't think there was, even when I was coming back from surgeries and things, I could still score the basketball. Right. And it's a skill set. Once you have it, it's more of a mindset than anything else. I mean, played against great defensive players, and you just have to figure a way to do it. Yeah. And so again, and so a lot of coaches don't want to build around one player or whatever, and that's understandable. So that would be kind of the answer I'd give you. I believed in myself, but I also understood the other side. That, you know, Pitt had Billy Knight. I played with Billy Knight all summer for several summers.
Okay. And hung with him.
Yeah, hung with him. But he was Billy Knight, and they, you know, so I didn't. If I'd have gone there, I don't know, I might have had junior and senior year. He would have been gone, you know, and so I might have had my turn. I just wasn't in the mindset to, you know. So I mean, that was just me, and so.
To connect it to kind of Steve's point, former two-time boxing champion Paulie Malignaggi, I asked him once, he's going to be on our show one of these days as well, but he didn't have a whole lot of support whenever he announced that he wanted to be a boxer. And I asked him about that, and he said, I don't know if it would have been good for me if I did. He said it kind of motivated me when they said that I couldn't do it. And I look back on my career, other than my parents, I did not have a whole lot of support, and they'd, you know, bust your chops. Did you have a lot of support? And the ones who didn't support you, did it more hurt you or did it push you?
Again, a balance, I would say. I did not have the type of overwhelming support you might suspect given the numbers I put up. A lot of people thought, you know, went to a small high school, whatever the competition wasn't necessarily up to snuff, all the different things. And so, believe me, I was driven without question, and I wanted to prove those people wrong. But I had a lot of people also in my corner dramatically that had a tremendous faith in me. And again, I didn't reach full size until I was literally a senior in college. So, you know, I had to work so hard because I was physically undeveloped to play against these great players. And again, by the time I was about 17, I was playing against the best players I ever played in Western Pennsylvania, hands down. And it was
a lot of
brutal.
Good ones.
Oh, yeah. Again, as we talked about before, I would go out on a limb and say that for that period of time, we may, as a town our size, had the greatest basketball of a town that size ever in the history of any town. I mean, we had 30 legitimate NBA players. Yeah. And if you stretch it a bit, you might have got out to 50 if everything went perfectly. Mm-hmm. The NBA only had 220 players or so. Think of that. A size, and an interesting thing, you may have heard this story, but when Connie Hawkins formed the Connie Hawkins Summer League, that Summer League was brutal. It was fabulous. Okay? Again, 30 NBA talent players playing in there. Okay? And you know, Connie Hawkins, Kenny Durrett, Maurice Lucas, Normie Nixon, Billy Knight, Sam Clancy, on and on and on.
Keith Starr, you talked about.
Keith Starr.
Norm Van Leer.
Okay, yeah. Brad Davis, Mickey Davis. You know, my goodness. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And then we are rated in the top 5 summer leagues. Bill Neal told me they had like a rating system, and it was comparable. You know, Connie Hawkins believed even with the Rucker League in New York City. And some reporter asked Connie Hawkins, and I love this story because it epitomizes the upper level sports mentality, in my opinion. They asked Connie Hawkins, if you know you've played in the Rucker League and you've played in the Connie Hawkins Summer League in Pittsburgh, if there's an all-star game between the two leagues, which group would win? Do you want to guess what his answer was? It was the absolute perfect answer.
Pittsburgh.
No, he said, which team am I playing on?
I like that.
I love that.
You mentioned some of those names, though, and obviously Western PA, they talk about football. Namath and Marino and Montana and George Blanda and Jim Kelly and Tony Dorsett, and we can go on and on and on. But basketball may have, Jimbo Covert, coaches Knox, Walton, Ditka. And Ditka is a player. And then Sean Gilbert and Aliquippa. I'm sure I'm missing some. I did say Namath, I'm sure. He was my favorite.
I still can't believe how you remember all these names. I got to have a cheat sheet.
We all remember those names in our age bracket. Believe me, young man, I'm telling you, I could rattle them off without blinking, and I could probably name the starting 9 for the Pirates during those years.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, there's much more TV now. I can't name you anything. I can name you all these things back
Saturation.
then.
It's saturation.
But you would think that you would know more now.
Well,
but the NBA players, you mentioned, again, Keith Starr did play there. And
absolutely.
Van
Melvin
Leer was
Bennett.
good. Melvin Bennett and Lucas.
Both Davis brothers.
Larry Brown for football, if you remember that name.
Right.
But I forgot to mention him. That's the guy I was drawing a blank on. But there's a lot of great basketball players. I mean, and not just physically great, but they had that mentality, as BB said. They may have been friends, but boy, when they were on the court, they wanted to win. And Steve mentioned this last time. Is it still there? And we talked about it on the phone.
Right. And what I say is, and I believe this, I think the leagues, even the Connie Hawkins Summer League, it was really good for maybe upper middle, so to speak. Okay, it was 8 teams. That's 80 players, and each team had 10 players. So you played all 10 players. Okay, well, and I didn't realize I didn't play in the Connie Hawkins Summer League that long, because the very top players broke away and played at the Pitt Fieldhouse on weeknights and Duquesne's little practice gym on weekends, and there was maybe the 20 to 30 of the truly elite, and again those nights and days were, it's real simple. Either the 3 top small guys, like if it was, Normie Nixon, maybe Kirk Bruce, and maybe Bobby Franklin or B.B. Flannery. B.B. Flannery or whomever. The 3 guards would pick up the teams, or it'd be Maurice Lucas, Billy Knight, and Kenny Durrett pick up the teams. And there'd be nights where it's literally 30 players who could conceivably end up in the NBA. Only 15 got to play.
But let me ask you this, though. After you played those guys, when you went to Kenyon, didn't you improve? Wasn't it much? I mean, you weren't even intimidated. You played against better talent. Didn't that make you better?
Oh, huge. And to be honest, the last year or two at Kenyon, it was only because the transfer rules were so strict that I really didn't leave. But I also knew, and we played a very good level of basketball. We played a lot of D2 teams and that were outstanding. We played Wright State. We played Youngstown. Youngstown State had their best team ever. They had their best player ever. His name was Jeff Covington. And we played them he's still their leading scorer and rebounder.
Where did he play after?
He played in the NBA for a while and then Europe for quite a number of years. He was a full 6'9". In Youngstown State, I think, beat Pitt one of the years, with Billy Knight and that group. Wow. And we played them every year, and I was voted to their first team all-opponent team like the last 3 years of my career. Wow. It was a fabulous game, close to Pittsburgh, and just the fans were there. It was so much fun. So, I mean, we played a good level of basketball, but to be honest, I mean, by that time I knew my future, what my future might be like, and I also knew the summers were where I made my name, not on the courts at Kenyon College.
All right, folks, you are talking business and life with Steve Mancini and Claudio Reilsono. We will be back right after these breaks.
Ciao, Chrissy. Your Italian got so much better. Brava.
Grazie. It's because I learned the best way possible.
How so?
Well, I learned that with apps, grammar books, and even YouTube videos, I could only get so far. I had to immerse myself. I noticed I did best when I was in Italy visiting family. That's where my level really soared.
And wow, did it work?
Thanks. I became much more confident, fast. That's why I created Footsteps Through Time. It's an Italian language experience. You don't just take Italian classes, you immerse yourself in a real Italian village. With lots of fun activities and excursions, it's life-changing.
I see. So, no more boring grammar, impersonal apps, just real conversations, real culture, and delicious food, of course.
Exactly. I'm so excited about this. Learn Italian by actually becoming part of the local community for a week and living it. So if you've been dreaming of Italy and the language, check out Footsteps Through Time in Italy.com. Book now and join the experience.
Andiamo!
Thanks to Greater Pittsburgh Travel. For any of your travel needs, let Tom and the team at Greater Pittsburgh Travel know and they'll take care of you. For more information, call 412-331-2244 or visit their website at www.greaterpittsburghtravel.com. And we want to thank the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. If you're interested in learning more, you can find their contact information on Facebook at Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. Again, thanks Domenica and the team at the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh for your support.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claudio Reilsono, and I am the author of the book, Lead from the Heart Up, Not the Neck Up, How to Create a Positive Winning Culture on the Field and in the Office. My years as a head baseball coach and a general manager of a pro baseball scouting company, I know that my leadership experiences that I've included in this book will help you become a better leader. You can get the book at ClaudioReilsono.com. Speaking of ClaudioReilsono.com, you can listen to my show, The Claudio Reilsono Show, where I've interviewed such legends as Mario Andretti, Dick Vermeil, Rocky Bleier, and many, many others. And I also have an entrepreneurial program there talking about my entrepreneurial experiences. So hopefully that'll help you and hopefully you will enjoy that. And also, Sports Corner, hosted by Ralph Williams, co-host with myself, Jim Frazier, and Luther Dupree Jr. We appear on 92.5 FM, 1250 AM, The Answer, Salem Radio, every Saturday here in Pittsburgh, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy all the shows, and I hope you enjoy my book.
We'd also like to thank Chris Gonzalez from the Knights of Columbus. If you have any questions about joining the Knights of Columbus, reach out to Chris Gonzalez at 412-605-9074.
Welcome back to Talking Business and Life with Steve Mancini and Claudio Reilsono. We have a very special guest today, Tim Appleton. Tim, you obviously were having a great college career, then a little bad thing happened. Tell us about what happened.
Okay. My senior year, and we were playing a very high level of basketball because, as it turns out, my junior year at Kenyon, we were really making a big turn. I grown, and we had one of the top D3 schedules, playing a lot of D2, even a low Division I here or whatever. And we had a very good team. And it was going to be a very good team come my senior year. Okay, now it was springtime my junior year, and as the best athlete on the campus, a small school, I had to recruit everybody that we were ever going to have. And to be quite honest, we did not recruit. We recruited as basketball players. A lot of them were great students. Okay, so they were all great people at very short, but not necessarily going to be their dreams and lives are to play in the NBA, and if it was, their dreams were misdirected. Okay, so springtime, and it's my junior year's over, and it was a very good junior year, and this was my little bit of break of the year, and so it's Saturday morning, and I'd had a rough Friday night. Okay, and my coach calls me Saturday morning. It's like 6 in the morning, and he says, we got a kid here. You got to take her on campus. I'm saying, oh no, not again. Okay, so anyways, finally talks me into it. Okay, and I get down to our gym, and the first indicator that maybe something was different here was this young man and his father. It was like stereo, and they're, Apple, we've come here to play basketball. And I said, well, that sounds great. It also sounds unusual, And he also had over his shoulders tied up his what are they called? The red high top All-Star, Converse All-Star. Chuck Taylors, exactly. Chuck Taylors. And
does that impress you, Steve? I know what kind of shoes now, too.
And he's carrying his basket. He says, we're here to play basketball, Timmy. I didn't know this young man from Adam, okay? And I'm thinking to myself, we haven't recruited anybody like this. And he is only about maybe 6'1" or so. But just his personality, you could tell, was just different, okay? And I wasn't playing. I was planning on taking him around campus. He was not going to have any of that. He wanted to play basketball. So I said, okay, I'll go get my shoes on. We'll play some basketball. And it took me no more than 2 minutes playing with him to know that this was a different level of player than we've been likely to have at Kenyon in my time. Okay, but I was going to be a senior. So I said, his name's Scotty Rogers, who was also drafted into the NBA and was last cut for the Pacers. But anyways, so I sit him down. I said, Scotty, you are a great basketball player, and you have a great attitude. This might not be the right place for you. And he said, no, I came here it's the right place for you. I've been following your career. I want to play with you, Timmy. Oh. I said, I'm really flattered. You do know I'm going to be a senior. And I said, you're going to be a freshman, And I said, we'll have a great year together, okay? But then you're going to have 3 more years, okay? So anyway, so he ended up coming, and we're still the only D3 school to ever have 2 NBA draft picks on the court at the same time. Wow. And he was fabulous. And he, too, he made the last cut with the Pacers, had a great career at Kenyon. But to cut to the chase of my senior year, we're on the verge of, I think, had a really good shot at winning the D3. We were killing people, and we were just gelling as a group. And it was the first time I didn't have to carry the load largely, totally myself. It just changed everything. And this guy and his attitude was like, a mix of our attitudes was perfect. Okay. I mean, he was like outgoing, effervescent, like compare Magic Johnson and Larry Bird or whatever. I was, I just liked to play basketball, and I wasn't a talkative screamer or whatever. I'm not going to yell at my teammates. Right. Scotty yelled at me and whatever. So we're there, and then it was about 2/3 through my senior year. I had a devastating knee injury. I tore the anterior cruciate ligament, lost my tendon, lost all my cartilage, and it was such that nobody had ever made it back from that injury to the NBA at that point in time. They just didn't have the surgeries. And I managed to finish my senior year, but it just destroyed it. It wasn't the same. And I knew I still got drafted. I never made it to camp. I got an offer to go to Finland. I did, but I hadn't had my big surgery. The doctors just told me, go see what you can do. They put a gigantic brace on my leg. And I lasted a little while, but then I knew I had to come back. But nobody even wanted to do the surgery. The doctors just said, you have a great education. You're not gonna, you'll be lucky to run again, let alone play basketball.
What team drafted you?
Detroit.
Okay.
Detroit. And so, but I was not ready to hear no, period. And so I finally found a surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic who was doing some experimental surgery. Okay. And I was in a gigantic leg brace. It's an enormous surgery. I mean, if you see my scars, they're something out of a different era altogether, So, and then I got a really good job, and I was transferred to California. And this is where the story becomes interesting. I mean, most people thought my basketball career was over. One person didn't. That was the guy who was going to work every day, and rehabbing on the side. And I was just getting to the point where I knew I had to make a transition. Right. I was starting to run. I was shooting, and I didn't know any. I was a single guy, maybe 24, 20, whatever. Didn't know a soul in California, and so I didn't even know where to work out. So I figured, what the heck, the San Francisco YMCA. You kind of YMCA.
Song's gotten a rebirth.
Little did I know, and yes, the San Francisco YMCA. There was so, and I'm there shooting baskets by myself one evening and starting to do running drills and things. And this older meaning mid to late 30s black gentleman, there's only one way in and out of this YMCA gym, and he's just standing there staring at me shooting baskets, and it was okay for like 10 minutes. And then I start getting a little queasy about the whole thing. And then I'm shooting for 20 minutes, still not budging. Okay, 30 minutes, still not budging. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm going to have to walk by this guy because he isn't going anywhere. So his name was Otis Haley, and this is where the story becomes really fun. Okay, Otis, I'm walking by, it goes, I coach a team around the area, a basketball team. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm looking for somewhere to play. I'm just getting started again. I didn't know him from Adam. He didn't know me from Adam. I'm from Pittsburgh. He's a West Coast guy. And he says, we're having tryouts on Saturday. I was living in Alameda, and the tryouts happened to be at Alameda Community College.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I thought it was like a Y League team or something. Okay. 2 miles from my house, Alameda Community College gym, Saturday morning, I walk in. There must have been 60 outstanding basketball players. And again, I'm the only person of my persuasion. I hope I'm saying this. And they're playing incredibly high-level basketball, just like at the field house.
Right.
Okay? And I go up to Otis, who's a middle-aged black man himself, and I said, Otis, I'm nowhere ready for this. I'm just not ready. I mean, there's a time. This would have been no problem. This isn't the time. And he goes, Appleton, you're not trying out. You're on the team.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, there's something fishy here. I can barely run. Mm-hmm. Okay. It was all these teams. This predates the D leagues and all those. Oh, yeah. It was really, so when people were coming off NBA teams, they just joined up corporate sponsored teams, and there's big tournaments up and down the West Coast on the weekends, and they might have a pot of 30,000 or something. The winning team would get maybe 5 or 10 or whatever. The corporate sponsors get publicity and whatever and competition. We were sponsored by a small group called Sacramento Ice Cream. Every player on that team was an NBA player.
Wow.
The 12 players that played for Sacramento all were NBA, either just off rosters, waiting to get off. So it'd be very similar to the D League or whatever it's called now. And Otis coached, and he was the best coach I ever played for, by far. Okay? And our team was so good, we travel up and down the coast. And he broke me in really slowly. I played into game stuff, and we practiced 2 days a week at the Berkeley YMCA. And I just got better and rehabbed and better and came along. And finally, we play a game. We're in a tournament, and Coors had a great team. The beer company, Coors.
Oh, I was going to say Coors.
We know beer.
Yeah, we know beer. And they had a fabulous team, and most of them were ex-UCLA players. Ex-UCLA players, which at that time, that was the standard of basketball.
Sure
These are guys who played for Johnny Wooden. So we fall behind. The three-point shot just finally come into play. We fall behind by 18 points. And I'm sitting at the end of the bench, thinking, what's going on? We're behind. We haven't been behind. So Otis comes down. He goes, Appleton, now you're going to see why you're on the team. He goes, you're going in there. And here's the deal, Appleton. As soon as you get the ball, I don't care where you are.
Fire it up.
Fire it up. He goes, all you're going to hear is this loud, screechy voice that says, money. And when you hear money, you just shoot the ball. And I said, this is a job I think I can do. So I get in and I have to make like 5 or 6 shots in a row, 3-pointers. We're back in the game. He gets me out of the game real fast.
Once they realize he can't run.
He says, you did your job.
You did your job, you're done.
So, we ended up winning the game. But gradually, I got far enough back along, and I got to play in Europe again for a number of years. And if it never would have happened had it not been for Otis.
All right, let me ask you a question. Did he know who you were? Did he ever figure it out later on, though?
Of course he figured it out. And let me tell you a story about it. A couple of things. Amazing guy. Otis Haley, you can Google Otis Haley. First high school kid to ever high jump 7 feet. He was an Oakland, California city kid. And then when the D League came along, he got one of the jobs to coach in the D League.
At what age was he?
He was probably 45 by then. And, and as I said, he was a fabulous coach. He actually won 2 of the titles. Go further, and this is a really sad ending to the story. He was on the verge of his 3rd, and he was either going to get an assistant head coaching job with, I think it was either Portland or Seattle.
Wow.
Had a massive heart attack on the sideline and died.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. So, but I'll never forget Otis, and he was one of the most memorable. It was so much fun playing, and that was by far the best organized team I ever played on. And again, if it wasn't for that, so I got to play in Europe a number of years. Finland, Argentina, toured Europe, and that kind of led to my further career after
For
basketball.
our listeners, Argentina is not in Europe, but
South America too. That's a good point. I'll tell you, this is again another oddity in my life. I believe I'm the only person on the planet ever to start one day in a small town close to the Arctic Circle called Huvinka, Finland, and ended with my next contract in Olavarria, Argentina.
Wow.
So, and you talk about a dichotomy, not just in
literally polar opposites.
you couldn't even imagine. And I mean, and I won't go into depth, but again, it was a wonderful time. And I actually got back pretty darn far. But once one part of your body's pretty well destroyed, it gradually falls apart. And by the end,
something and all that, yeah.
I mean, by the end, every part of my body was taped.
How many years did you play?
3 or 4. That was about all I got in because my body was so destroyed, and it was, believe me, it took its toll. I've had 19 major surgeries and counting at this point. And when I was done, I was done. I'd given everything I had, but it was a great time. We all would love it to be longer, but I really truly I know I reached a certain level before my injury, and I also know I reached a really high level after my injury. It was just short-lived.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because now when you the one thing we do like to ask a lot of folks, especially professional athletes, is, you still played longer than most people played, so there's always something. You say 3-4 years, like I get that, but during that time it sounds like the clock was ticking quickly on you. So there was a moment when you were like, this either I'm done or I know I'm almost just about done. What was your mindset there? What then were you like, now what?
Yes, fear. Fear. Okay, without question. But also I promised myself early on, and even without injuries, I did not want to be a hanger-on, so to speak. And don't get me wrong, I'm not taking anything away from anybody. If there's a lot of money involved, obviously, and you can still play at a high level, even if you're not necessarily getting better, whatever. I truly played the game because I wanted to see what level I could achieve.
Challenging yourself?
Absolutely. And I did not want to hang on when I was going downhill, so to speak. So after the injury, first of all, a lot of people didn't think I could play at all. So, and it was, I tell you what, if everything would have went perfectly, and if the league was closer to the way it is now, where shooting was a much bigger thing, and long distance shooting in particular.
Yeah.
Okay. I would have, and if I didn't have to carry teams a lot and with my body as it was, but again, I was a different player, and I got weight room. I became much stronger. My range was even longer. I could shoot from, I don't even consider the NBA 3-point shot much of a distance, and never did, and so, again, I because of that, I could keep playing, but, again, sooner or later, it became pretty self-evident that my body was going.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had to make some tough decisions. But to be quite honest, to answer you, Steve, is that, I knew I was able to, I didn't think I was going to have trouble finding a job or something. What I was going to have trouble with is finding another passion.
Well put.
Yeah, because now you go from, living the dream, for lack of a better term, to like my life.
You know what, though? You hear a lot of athletes don't do well after they retire. But then a lot do. Those are the ones I admire the most, and Steve and I talk about. The ones like, it's over, let me move on. Or again, I know Steve's tired of hearing it, but Greg Norman said, I want to plan for my life when I'm no longer #1 golfer in the world.
For the record, I'm not tired of hearing that, because it's good advice. No, it's a truism that a lot of people, even and you know what, real quick, because I don't think you have to be a professional athlete to think that way. I don't. Everybody has their dreams, but very few people really get to live their dream. Whether it's sports or whatever it is, there's a career, there's something that people are passionate about. But I think even if you get your dream, even then it's only temporal. I mean, you're not going to, no matter what you're doing, either one of two things is going to happen. Let's like say if it's athletes, at some point your body, I don't care who you are, whether it's an injury or not, your body's going to slow down naturally, and that is not permanent. Yeah. Or if it's something that you're passionate about, I don't know, let's just say it's art, whatever. Maybe when you do it every day, it stops becoming a passion, and then just becomes a job. So I think we all, but to your point, I think he's right with that, but I think it's deeper to me because it means there's going to be some point, even when you do what you are wanting to do, even that, no matter what it is, won't be there forever.
Well, Joe, I'm reading Joe Theismann's book again, and he said, at 10:04, I was a starting quarterback of the Washington Redskins. 10:05, I had a broken leg, and I was a has-been. He went to, which he wasn't a has-been because he still was who he was, but he went to the locker room about 2 weeks later, and the guy who they signed, Steve Bartkowski, his uniform was in his locker, and Theismann's stuff was in a box.
That's how fast it is.
And
it
it's
is
real
a business.
fast. And he won a Super Bowl, NFL Man of the Year, an MVP. He just pushed aside. Now, for a while there, he didn't know what he was going to do. But he knew what he was going to do, but he wasn't Joe Theismann, the quarterback. Then he had to adjust, and he became Joe Theismann, announcer, commercials, speaker, author, so on and so forth. Some guys don't do well. Obviously, you did well after basketball. But mentally, were you okay with it? And you can tell us what you did.
I appreciate you saying I did well, but I certainly did marginally well, I would say, to be quite honest. And again, because of having a good education and being the person I was, and Kenyon's a fabulous school, and I made very good contacts at the school. When I was done playing basketball, I did not have a difficult time transitioning to a job, okay, but it wasn't like I had planned. I had no idea what type of career I'd want. So, literally, my first job after basketball, okay, a big fan from Kenyon, and all I did was get the alumni directory from Kenyon and sit down with it and call, people who were alumni who had important jobs with major corporations or any corporation.
That's smart to do.
It was the only alternative that and the people would pick up their phone because I was Tim Appleton. Right. And I can remember his name was Bob Himmler. He had founded and was chairman of the board of was at one time Monarch Rubber, which was the largest industrial tire company in the world, and they were bought out by Teledyne when Teledyne was becoming a conglomerate. And so, being myself and just not having any real sense or any sense of boundaries, I found Mr. Himmelwright's, phone number in the book, picked up the phone, and said, and got Mr. Himmelwright on the phone personally. Hey, Timmy, how you doing? He goes, what have you been doing? I said, well, I just finished my career in Europe and South America playing basketball, and my body's pretty much straight. He goes, well, why are you calling me? I said, I'm calling you because
does your corporation need a point guard?
Well, one of the questions I was going to ask is how were you able to leverage your basketball career into the business world, which that's exactly what you did.
And he said, well, why are you calling me? I said, well, I need a job. And he goes, well, what did you say you were doing? I said, well, I was in Europe and played for Finland, and then I was in Argentina. I played a year and a half or 2 years in Argentina. He goes, wow, you were in South America. He goes, how would you like to be our Southern Hemisphere sales manager? Okay. I said, well, it sounds reasonable. So I'm like 27 years old, whatever, and my territory was Australia, New Zealand, all of Africa, all of South America, the islands. My trips were like 6 weeks at a time. I'd be home for like a week or two. So didn't know what I was doing, to be quite honest. But again, all my job really was going to all these places where there's large families who had distributorships that supplied industrial tires. And I was a sales guy. And so it was just...
What was your job?
Well, basically, I had to keep clients happy, okay. Which was largely entertain them. When I was there might be one family who controlled all the industrial tire business in, maybe half of, Australia or wherever, or Uruguay or Bolivia or Colombia or wherever. And
how were you able to adjust from hearing the applause and with 3 seconds left, you getting the ball and taking the shot, and to that, which is a good thing? That's a good job, and you were traveling. But how were you able to make that adjustment? Again, Theismann said, "I'm no longer an NFL quarterback." You have that title. You were no longer a professional basketball player. How did you deal with that?
It was challenging, to be quite honest, and I was a fish out of water, to be quite honest. Okay, I'm not saying I was good or bad at it, whatever. I just did not have a passion for it. Okay, and so again, I was fortunate to have good jobs because of contacts and whatever, and traveling around the world, but I was always a person who needed, call it a North Star or a passion. And I also knew that traveling the way I did, after that I had domestic jobs. There were lots of years where I was in hotels 200 nights a year.
Wow.
Okay? And so family life wasn't a possibility. I wasn't married at that point, but it hit me that if this kept going, I wasn't going to have a family.
Yeah.
Okay? And so I had to kind of confront things really hard. And at one point it became clear that, I could have made a good living and continued to make a good living, but it was not a life I really enjoyed or found much meaning in. And I thought the next step, much seemed like, was a family. Okay, and it turned out when I finally made that decision, I met my wife, and we didn't, I was mid-30s, she was not young either, and to be quite, we saw each other and we knew we both wanted a family, and really we married pretty quickly. Wow. And within, we married and we started having a family, and that was my second passion, the kids, without question. So yes, how the transition. I had a hard decade. It was not hard in the sense of torturous or anything. I had a great job. I had great jobs. I got to travel around the world and travel domestically, and everything was expensed. I didn't have to. It was not too different than basketball. I didn't know how to take care of myself. All I did was sign off on expense reports.
Yes, I did order the caviar.
I'm not saying it was hard, but like people who do have it hard, sure. Working in steel mills or whatever. I lived a very privileged life, and I think to myself, man, was I spoiled to a large degree, And so, but again, I knew I couldn't keep doing it. I had, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me was the kids. And my wife was a fabulous mom, and she's a wonderful lady, a phenomenal lady, and we dedicated ourselves to raising our family. And again, and that was another conscious decision I made. That my kids hardly knew I played basketball.
Does that bother you?
No, that was my choice.
Okay.
That was my choice because I did not want them competing with. I wanted their time, and I did not want to steer them even subconsciously any direction. I had 2 girls and a boy, and they each found their own way. They're doing remarkably well. They're all 3 of them are married, and I have 6 what are termed these days super achievers in my next generation, which I could not be more proud of.
Sure.
Okay, my oldest daughter lives in Cincinnati with a wonderful man. She hasn't had any children yet. My second daughter lives in Dallas with another wonderful man with two children, so my two granddaughters, and then my son lives in northern New Jersey. He's married, has my first grandson, and I'm not going to brag about this too much. All of them are doing fabulous. They all have stories. Timmy went to George Washington Law School, made law review, recruited by all the top law firms, and he's working as one of the top young attorneys in New York City.
You've done well.
He's done well.
Yeah, But
They've done well. They've all done well.
He's tired of my sayings. If you ever see a turtle on top of a fence post, you know he didn't get there alone.
There you go.
So
Thank
I'm
you.
not tired of Claudio's sayings. Well, I was going to ask you if you ever had to dunk on him. Just to say, listen, let's go play one-on-one. Let's go. Boom. Now shut up and eat your food. No.
I like to, here's the way I like to I like to say that every parent likes their kids to do better than them. I just would like them to take more than 6 weeks to have done it.
No, you know what? I'm sure that obviously they're doing well, but they're very proud of you, and I'm sure you've inspired and motivated them, and you're a good man too. And
I hope so.
And that, you know, again, the Italians, what do they say? "Il pesce puzza dal capo." The fish stinks from the head. If it's bad, it trickles down. If it's good, it trickles down. So you've obviously done
I
well
surely
with
hope
it.
so. And you know, we all have our ups and downs.
Oh,
We all have our ups and downs, but yes, I mean, my kids got the best of my wife and me, and that's what a parent's job, in my opinion, are. So yes, and there's nothing I'll ever be more proud of.
Good for you.
So.
Now, I know we want to get this in. Tell us what you're doing now.
Okay, yes.
Very important and passionate to you. I know that.
Absolutely. And again, when I retired, my kids, even not so much the retiring, but the kids, when it became evident that my children were well on their way to success, okay, and also not going to be around Pittsburgh, I started to go through another pretty tough time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, again, passion 1, basketball, passion 2, the kids and the family, okay, and it was just very fortunate. You mentioned the gentleman you're going to have on the show, Stratton.
Oh, sure.
And it said I had divorced myself largely from the basketball world. You know, separated myself from the basketball world, and my time on the basketball stage in Pittsburgh was very small, and I didn't even have any idea if people would remember who I was. And then Bill O'Neill, who ran the Connie Hawkins Summer League. I started to get my name out there, and I was invited to this 50th reunion of the Connie Hawkins Summer League and welcomed with unbelievably warm, open arms, and the best players ever played, you know, recognized that I was one of them, okay? And so it was trying to find another, I knew I had to find another passion or I was going to have a tough time again, okay? And this is where it all started to evolve. And it was a random chance thing. I answered, which you should never do, something online for tutors. But it turned out not to be a thing. I got some really good tutoring situations. I enjoyed teaching and tutoring kids. But then I got a referral to an organization called Hope Ignites, which is a fabulous nationwide organization, well-funded, privately funded, from grants and things like that. And it's for inner city kids with, you know, living in really bad neighborhoods that might be one-parent households, where they voluntarily go into these facilities with tremendous direction, with the goal of the program to get these children, they call them young scholars, get them into the best high school and then the best college they can go to. Wow. And when I got referred to tutor there, it just clicked. It was magic.
You knew what you wanted. Right?
It was magic because these young kids, I mean, they had lots of tutors before me, but none who had an NBA background. Okay? And these are these young, you know, inner city kids. This is what I did from 17 to whatever until my basketball career. So there's like a connection that was immediate. In my like connection with them, my time being spent, then I got referred to Neighborhood Academy, which is, you know, a charter school in the city and they have a very good basketball program, so I'm tutoring there also. And I'm treated with so much love. It's beyond imagination. I mean, it's beyond imagination. And I love these kids. I mean, it's just, so I mean, it was just random chance almost that it happened. But now I know, and I'm becoming much more involved in the basketball world again, and I hope to, you know, I'm sure I'll be doing some camps and things like that, not just to teach them how to shoot, you know, jump shots, but life, talking about life. And, you know, and these are, you know, and I know how fortunate I've been. Okay, I was anything but a saint growing up. But because of me being me, I mean, if I did something bad, if I got was taken over to my parents, but it wasn't life altering. Okay, right. It was, I had second and third and fourth chances. A lot of inner city kids might not get a second chance. It's a little different situation, and so the goal is to keep these kids on the straight and narrow. And now the ones I'm tutoring at Hope Ignites largely are a couple are at Central Catholic and doing fabulously well and play on the football team. And so again, I just feel, thank goodness, I can see that my 70s could be one of my best decades ever.
No doubt, yeah.
So, and just I feel blessed.
No, I do believe that when one door closes, another opens, and I think we're all called for certain things. And I think when we find the path we're supposed to be on, it makes life more enjoyable. It's more than money. I mean, like you said, you could have gone probably and kept cashing the checks, but some people just find that emptiness. We're getting ready to wrap up, but the one thing we do try and do from this show is give people something to walk away from. If you were going to give people advice, people that are listening, and some people. We actually have people from all over the world, different age range, listen to the show. You've obviously instilled something in your kids, and you're trying to instill that same kind of attitude, mentality into the kids you're mentoring now. What is the it that you try? If there's one thing you say, listen, if I could put something in someone's brain that would change them, this is what I would put in their brain. What would you do? Okay,
here's what I would say. I am a huge believer in integration, okay, and I honestly think that that we all it would be wonderful if we all could be in the minority for a period of time. It would, I think, it changed my perspective, and so don't think that what the majority is doing is always the correct thing. Might be, and give yourself an opportunity to try to experience groups that you're not necessarily comfortable with, to start with, okay? It's never easy, when you go into a new environment. Okay, I can tell you, when I went from, Avalon, which was a middle class, suburban neighborhood, into the inner city to play basketball. It was a different world for me, okay? And it took a while to adjust. Now, I could tell you this, but I can tell you, because I was a basketball player, I was treated with so much love, it was beyond belief. And so, but by the same token, it took time to absorb all that. And then also, there was a couple towns I played basketball in where I was the only American in the town, pretty much. Okay? And then when I traveled for the job I told you about overseas, I traveled alone into areas that were, not safe areas for a lot of people, or not places you choose. So, I mean, I guess the one thing I'd want to say is get as much experience as you can. Education's fabulous, but if you have an opportunity to do something a little different, don't be, do it.
Keeps you on your toes, that's for sure.
It keeps you on your toes, and you're going to be a better person for it down the road.
Wow.
That's my what I would say.
Real quick, what's next for you?
Just what I'm doing now.
Okay,
just what I'm doing now. I feel blessed. I'm gonna try to keep doing so. I'm gonna try to open as many doors. And real simply, if anybody who's listening to this has people they want me to talk to, motivational speeches, anything to that effect, I'm more than open.
All right. Okay. Well, Tim, Stratton was on the button.
Well,
and we appreciate him telling me about you, telling us about you. And you're a wonderful guy, and I just met you, but I can tell you're a hell of a person. And you want to have impact on people, and you've had a ton of impact already, but I know you're going to impact more people. We wish you all the best, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Claudio, thank you, Steve. I'm telling you, this is so meaningful to me because it will help open more doors in the area. And I'm thrilled because, again, as I said, I spent 30 years raising my family. Now I want to give back, and I want to help as many people, and especially kids who need help or could use help. So that's really what's next.
Well, good for you. Congratulations. Steve, as always, we appreciate the listeners. I appreciate you. Thank you. And as always, thank you, Mom and Pop. Talk to you guys soon.
Thank you for listening to Talking Business and Life with Claudio Reilsono and Steve Mancini. Tune in next week for more impactful business and life experiences with Claudio and Steve.